site contract.
But yeah, we'll get around it.
Electrical, forget, you can't get it out of bid. And we just bet each one for each job, but yeah, site's gotten really tight lately. Thought about just pulling that in, starting my own just because margins are a lot better with the site.
Is it?
This meeting of the Community Development Board is called to order on March 20th, 2024. Welcome, everyone. Please join me and stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This board consists of 7 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the City Council and serve voluntarily. I am John Quattrocchi, and I will ask the other members and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Andrew Hupp. Obray Hodrick, Kurt Heinrichs.
Jay Daniel, attorney for the board.
Rosemary Call, City Clerk.
Laura Maskey, Planning and Development.
Matthew Midge, Assistant City Attorney.
Gina Clayton, Planning and Development.
Diane Antonelli.
Michael Bucikas.
Andy Park.
Bruce Rector.
Please remember to turn off your cell phones so that they do not become a distraction during the meeting. Please also refrain from having conversations in the room so that we might hear all the testimony given today. To ensure a complete record of this board's actions, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone at the podium in front of us. Clearly state and spell your name for the clerk. I will ask all those who are in attendance today who plan to speak to please rise and be sworn in by the clerk.
Do you affirm to tell the truth throughout your entire testimony?
Agendas of today's meeting are on the podium to your left near the entry door. Also on the podium are a roster of the Community Development Board, the list of city staff experts and their resumes, the board's rules of procedure, and the annual schedule of this board. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from last month's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, there's an opportunity for citizens to be heard. Is there any person wishing to address the board on a matter that does not appear on today's agenda? Please come forward and state and spell your name for the clerk.
Let's see, Darrell Lakey, L-A-K-E-Y, 1792 Overlook Avenue, Clearwater, Florida. I live on Stevenson Creek, and nobody's happy with you all. I'm speaking in regard to FLD, Frank Larry David, 2023-11023, the massive commercial dock that you approved last month, against the opposition of many residents, letters and emails, and they need to rename you guys the builder, the builder, development board, because you don't listen to the community. It's like David, fighting Goliath. It just is an uphill battle, but really, what was the hurry last month? You knew you had opposition. You had no reports from the DEP, from Save the Manatee, FWC, NOAA, none of those reports that I can see in the records. And you just, oh yeah, it's okay. The previous harbor master on the previous plan, it was 133 feet out into Stevenson Creek there. He flatly denied that application last year. They resubmitted it, and we got a new harbor master. Lo and behold, Mike's a good guy. I don't agree with what he says. He said the navigability of the creek is about 150 feet away from the north shore, and the channel is only on the north shore. If you remember 10 years ago, the city filled all that in with sand and silt after they dredged, and they wanted to plant in mangroves, and they all died. But you still have that mound that you protrudes from the south all the way to the north, cuts down the creek, navigability. There's about 9 boats upstream, maybe 10, and this is going to double the amount of boats on there. They also cited that there is a multi-dock, a multi-slip dock in the area. Yeah, it's across the street. It's in Clearwater Bay, clearly a different watershed. And I just can't believe you didn't wait. Really, what was the hurry? Those 10 townhomes are not going to be built probably for another 2 years. Everybody knows Serena by the Sea is going to use those docks. And you guys asked, are these docks specifically for 1028, Sunset Point? And they said yes, and you agreed to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West. Have a question first, and can I speak on the rules of procedure that you're going to be talking about later, or do you want those comments at this time?
They're on the agenda. I prefer to have the comments on the agenda items as they come up.
All right. Let me address something first then. When I was married, my wife would sometimes complain to me about something that I had done that was perhaps inappropriate in some way. And I used to say, well, don't tell me about what I did, just tell me what I should do moving forward. And so kind of in that spirit, I'd like to focus a little of attention on the something for you folks moving forward. And it's something that I've shared with you before about the flexibility of the code, that when this code was rewritten, the author talked about how if a project fits in, then it should earn the additional flexibility that's allowed in the code. And so that's in the provision, the 3914 provision of the code. And that talks, and the wording is very specific. And the first one is section A1, where the standard reads, in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of adjacent properties in which it's located. And on the project that you had last month, the staff findings responded that it was compatible or comparable in size with the commercial docks serving multifamily developments in the immediate area. So yet the standard isn't a immediate area, the standard is adjacent properties. And a review of the picture shows that there is, it's perhaps an immediate area, like the staff said, but there's several properties that intercede to avoid it being adjacent. Also, the other standard is standard 5, the character of the immediate vicinity. And so when you look at this, you see that there's really 2 character areas. And so I would ask you in the future to look specifically at those 2 provisions and look specifically at the wording, because you are the backstop if staff isn't as thorough as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? We'll now move on to the regular agenda. Today, we have a level 2 case. All level 2 cases, such as flexible development, are considered quasi-judicial hearings. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the Community Development Board reviews the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today and makes a final decision subject to appeal. This board has previously qualified all the city staff who will testify as experts in their area of professional training, education, and experience. The list of city staff experts and their resumes are in the handbook on the podium near the entry door. Any other professionals who desire to be qualified as an expert witness shall so request at the beginning of the case and present a resume to each board member. The board shall determine whether or not to qualify the person as an expert and in what field of study. At the beginning of each level 2 case, I will ask for anyone who wishes to request party status to come forward and state your reasons. Party status may be granted if the person requesting such status demonstrates that they are a substantially affected person. The board will then determine whether or not to grant party status. Then the case will proceed as follows. Presentation by planning and development staff, presentation by the applicant, presentation by persons with party status. Cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff, cross-examination of witnesses by applicant, cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. Comments by the public, closing remarks by the planning and development staff, closing remarks by persons granted party status, closing remarks by the applicant, closing of the public hearing, discussion, and vote by the board. Our level 2 case today is case FLD 2022-020008A at 1510 Berry Road. The owner is Global Village LLC and Rebus Salas LLC. Applicant Kriker Kasarjian, Trans Systems Gulf Coast Consulting. Located at 2.137 acres consisting of one parcel on the north side of Berry Road, approximately 330 feet east of Highland Avenue. Requesting to amend a previously approved flexible development application to construct a 43-unit attached dwelling project, including 11 affordable units in the office district portion of the property, is a comprehensive infill redevelopment project. Pursuant to the Community Development Code Section 4-406B, the amended project proposes to construct a new building adjacent to Berry Road, 30 feet in height, and increases off-street parking to a minimum of 79 parking spaces. An outdoor recreational area is proposed on the portion of the property located in the low-medium density residential district. Flexibility is requested for setbacks and landscaping. Assigned planner is Melissa Hawk Baker. And at this time,
Mr.
Good.
Quattrocki, excuse
Did
me.
I miss something?
I think there's been a little bit of a mix-up the way the agenda is portrayed. This item was supposed to be on the consent agenda today because we did not receive any objections prior
We did
to
not.
the meeting. I don't know, there's some people in the audience of whether, they were here to pull it off. But this says consent agenda, but I feel that there was a miscommunication on how this
All
is.
right. Yeah, it's not showing that
showing
way on my agenda either, so, John, why don't you go through the consent agenda announcement, and then we'll determine whether there are
Okay.
any need to pull it off.
this board has adopted a consent agenda format, and the consent items are identified as such on the agenda. Consent agenda items are those items for which the Planning and Development Department recommends approval. The applicant is in agreement with any proposed condition, and no written objections to the case have been received to date. Items may be removed from the consent agenda today by a member of the board, a member of the staff, or any person in the audience for questions or objections. I will read each item on the consent agenda. If any person wishes to remove this item from the consent agenda, please so state or raise your hand, and we will remove it from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be heard in the regular order of the meeting. Items that remain in the consent agenda will be approved with a single vote as to the type of the hearing. We need to read it again or just identify?
No,
case?
you've already read it.
Okay,
Just,
so just case FLD 2022-02-008A. Does anybody wish to have this item removed from consent? So seen. It'll be on the regular agenda. So, we'll now move on to our regular course, and I already read the procedures for the,
You did?
are we okay to move forward with it?
So you want to request ex parte communications and
Yeah.
request persons with party status.
So, does anybody on the board have any ex parte communications on this item, this case?
No.
Does anybody in the audience wish to have party status? Seeing none? We'll then move on to presentation by planning and development.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I'd ask the board accept Ms. Melissa Hawk Baker as an expert witness in general planning, zoning, redevelopment planning, land development code, land development code amendments, special area plans and overlay district, site plan review, landscape architecture, historic preservation, comprehensive sign programs, and all other matters she's about to testify from.
Move to accept Ms. Hawk Baker as an expert witness on the subject matters presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And we have one more expert witness. I would ask the board to accept Mr. Kyle Vaughn as an expert witness in civil engineering, land development, construction and building permits, boundary location, Florida licensed professional surveyor and mapper, and all other matters he is about to testify from.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I motion to accept Mr. Kyle Vaughn, was it?
Vaughn.
Vaughn, as an expert witness. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good afternoon, Melissa Houck Baker, Planner 3 in the Planning and Development Department. The case before you, you actually already saw this in 2022. It is for 1510 Barry Road, and the amendment case numbers FLD 2022, dash 02008, capital letter A. And the project site was already approved for a 43-unit attached dwelling project, and that included 11 affordable dwelling units. And the project proposed to retain all of the buildings on site. Due to some unforeseen construction costs, part of the site lies within a FEMA flood hazard area, and the cost to retain the one-story building that's directly adjacent to Barry Road was too cost prohibitive. And so that leads us to this case coming back before you. The site has two different zoning districts. It actually consists of two separate lots. The larger lot with the to the left, this is all of the development will be in the office zoning district portion. And the LMDR portion, which is the residential portion, is to the east. And it's to the east of the driveway entrance that's directly off of Barry Road. The project will demolish all of the buildings directly adjacent to Barry Road. The two-story buildings that are interior to the site, those were already approved. They were also modified. The project went through a minor revision where the applicant requested to change the project, and that's sort of what led up to the meeting today, because the height that was previously granted isn't exactly in line with the height of the building that they're proposing. The changes include the demolition of the one-story buildings, and so the project will feature an increase in parking. The prior approval included 53 spaces, and this project will now have 79 spaces. 53 spaces were the number of spaces that were deemed the requirement under the parking assessment that the applicant prepared and submitted. The project will also include extensive landscaping improvements and parking lot improvements. The proposed new building is going to feature a 10-foot setback off of Barry Road frontage. The prior project, the existing building had a lesser setback. The landscaping, the code requires buffers, and the adjacent land uses all deem that each property line is subject to a 10-foot landscaping buffer. Due to existing constraints, such as the property to the north is completely a paved area where the property line bisects through a drive aisle and a portion of parking. So it's just not possible to provide the exact prescription of landscaping buffers the way the code is written, but they have filed a comprehensive landscaping program application, which allows an applicant to say, I will provide all of the necessary landscaping throughout the remainder of the site. So in essence, they're still providing the required amount of landscaping, just not in the exact prescription of the lot lines. They would have to dig up drive aisles and things like that. The proposed height, the way our code says height is to be measured, is from design flood elevation. Design flood elevation is base flood elevation, which is determined by FEMA, plus 2 feet of freeboard. And this project is at 27 feet design flood elevation. So it is within the 30 feet that was advertised, and the finished first floor is at an elevation of 34 feet, which is 4 feet above grade. So just to give everybody an idea of, you know, literally the 2 stories, will they actually look like 2 stories? Yes. And the image that you see up on the screen is the elevation from the Barry Road frontage. The driveway at the Barry Road connection, this is the segment that's within the office district. There is the sidewalks do not line up from the east side and the west side. And so the applicant has agreed, if the board so chooses to approve the project, that what they will do is realign the sidewalks so that they have a proper alignment, and it provides for a safe crosswalk, and it will also help to clean up that area a little bit. The driveway access that's to the east of that enters into right now a parking lot that's sort of a dead end, that's going to be completely removed. And the basketball court that was shown on the plans, the applicant has agreed that that will be eliminated, and it will only be landscaping. So the driveway point along Barry Road will be eliminated, and the entire portion of that site will be landscaping. Staff is recommending approval with all of the noted conditions of approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anybody?
I have a question in regards to stormwater. We're in a floodplain, you said. Is it a closed basin?
Stormwater, so the portion of the site that's in the residential zoning district, that's going to just be landscaping, there's going to be a dry pond as part of that portion of the site, as well as a vault for stormwater.
It's in a closed basin or an open basin with swift mud, do you know?
The basin is going to be open. It's going to be a dry pond.
So that's, closed or open is relative to the floodplain and what they have to store?
And I would rather defer that to, okay. We don't have anybody here for stormwater.
The applicant might know too. On backers.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's just not my area of expertise.
Do you know how many cubic feet they're storing on site?
No.
No? Or what standard it meets? No?
No.
Okay. Are there islands required for the parking?
Yeah, the most of the existing parking lot is going to remain as is, and they're going to, you know, make the necessary improvements, landscaping, repaving, restriping.
Typically, at the end of each, let's say, 10 rows of parking, isn't there an island required?
Yes, I mean, an island, you cannot have more than 20 parking spaces in an aisle or in a row without having an island separating. So 20 spaces is the maximum that you can have between parking lot islands.
They're not required at each end of the row, Gina?
No, it's, the code was changed maybe 6, 7 years ago to require an island for every 20 feet, so we had a more meaningful island where trees and landscaping could actually flourish.
Yeah, the dimension of the island requirement is 17 feet from back of curb to back of curb. And that change was done at the same time that folks were allowed to add 20 parking spaces between islands so that there would be a better chance of the landscaping materials surviving.
So on the east side, that 20 rows of parking, those, that you have islands there? I don't see them.
That is because there, is subsurface to that is the Stevenson's Creek culvert.
So they're
So-
exempt from it because of the culvert, or they'd have to
Well,
have it
if you
anyway?
started to dig in there too far, you're gonna go swimming.
How does that negate an island, though? That requirement, just because there's an obstruction?
I'm not sure the science of it, you know, like what is the,
Relative to the code, though, is my question.
Well, they have applied for a comprehensive landscape program, which can afford flexibility in situations like this, and so that's why I think Melissa mentioned that at
Okay.
the beginning. So,
Thank you, that was my question.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you.
thank you.
We'll then go on to presentation by the applicant.
Good afternoon. I'm going to hand out Mr. Kazarjian's resume here momentarily. Mr. Chairman, Brian Ungst, 625 First Street. At this time, I'd like to ask the board to consider and accept Mr. Peter Kazarjian from Gulf Coast Consulting, who's testified before the board many, many, many times on the areas of civil engineering, site planning, and stormwater, and the associated issues that he will be testifying to today. We also have our architect, Mr. Joseph Belluccia here, but we didn't bring his resume because I don't anticipate him having to testify. But if you do have some questions later, he's here to answer them as well. But he won't be as part of our case in chief, as it were.
Do I have a motion?
Move to accept Mr. Kazarjian as an expert witness.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Ungst, 625 Court Street, McFarlane Ferguson, on behalf of the applicant, Glozell Village LLC. As Ms. Hawk-Baker stated, this is an amendment to a prior FLV application that you approved back in 2022. Literally, the only changes that you're approving today are for a portion of the site that is in the flood zone. And going through permitting, it was determined that reusing the existing single-story buildings was not feasible because it would result in a substantial improvement under FEMA, which would require the occupiable levels to be raised above the developable flood elevation only for that portion of the site. So the way we're referring to this is phase two. Phase two includes 31 of the 43 units. Phase one is about to get its building permit and its demolition permit. Phase one is 12 units, and so we are actively going through that permitting process and anticipate that we will have a building permit to demo and begin construction on phase one anytime. So this project is moving forward, which is good news because it is an eyesore. There's folks in the audience here who all they want to know is, when is this going to be improved? When is this going to be redeveloped? It is really dilapidated and really poor. My client actually purchased the property after the 2022 approval, believing that it was turnkey and he was going to go walk down and pick up a permit and that this thing would already be constructed. Unfortunately, as I stated, going through the permitting process, it was determined that because of the flood zone, we would have to come back. to get an amended level 2 approval to increase the height above the developable flood elevation. So really, the only thing that's happening in this application is for the 31 units, the height is increasing to 27 feet above developable flood elevation, which is below the allowable height for the district. We're increasing the landscaping, increasing the parking, and increasing the setbacks. So the setbacks are also increasing. There's no reduction in the setbacks as a result of the new building. And frankly, the elevations are probably greatly improved over what was previously proposed with repurposing the existing single-story buildings. I know that Mr. Hupp has some technical questions regarding stormwater calculations and the basin. I will defer to Mr. Kazarjian to answer those questions. It may come up because it came up in some emails, but this property has been the subject of significant code enforcement activity over the years prior to my client purchasing it. My client did pay $50,000 to settle the code enforcement fines, and he entered into a settlement agreement, and as part of the settlement agreement, it says he's required to get all building permits necessary to construct the project within 3 months. And I was not his lawyer when he negotiated that, because I would have told him there is no way you will ever get all of your necessary permits in 3 months. Try more like a year. So the city staff has not enforced that. They've been working with us. They've been putting that in abeyance. It's not really before this board. You are not the code enforcement board, but in case it comes up in public comment, I did want you to know that. And we have already also executed a land use restriction agreement, a LURA, to restrict the 11 units as affordable units, which will be below 120% AMI as defined by Florida statute for affordable housing. Mr. Kazarjian.
Creek Orchid Sergeant, Gulf Coast Consulting. I wanted to just address your comment that you had. Is it a closed basin? It's not. It is connected to the Stevenson Creek Basin, which is just directly behind the vacant lot.
It's closed, correct? Or is it closed basin?
It's not a closed basin. I mean, it's Stevenson Creek is the basin.
Right.
When you say it's a closed basin, to me, it tells me that it doesn't discharge anywhere.
Well, my understanding is closed versus open. If you discharge to the Gulf directly, that's an open basin, according to
So
SWIFMUD.
it goes through Stevenson Creek before it goes out to the
Right. It's got
if that's your
a
definition.
distance to run. Well, it's not mine.
Right.
I go by SWIFMUD and
Okay.
how they define it under FEMA. That's what my question was.
Okay. It doesn't go directly to the Gulf. It goes
Right.
through Stevenson Creek. Okay. If there were any other questions in
He
regards
asked
to the height?
about the quantity of the stormwater calculations on site, what's being retained.
So,
Do you want to re-ask it?
No, I see that now that you guys are pre and post the same rate for, and my question would be with the city is this a change in use for this property when you guys studied this?
Well, unfortunately, no one from Stormwater is here, but they look at pre and post, obviously.
In terms of planning and zoning,
It's a
because you get
change of use.
a
but
change of
from-
use, you get flagged. If it's a change of use, then you have to go back and redirect the stormwater analysis, like I did on Gulf to Bay for that strip center. You define that as a state change of use, where I was less impervious. And I'm just trying to understand how you guys view that, because I was required to do an intensive stormwater system that didn't exist, and I see that this, is an existing building, and I put retail back in, but yet I had to go through that whole stormwater, even though I had less impervious in the after condition. And so, I was called a change in use, even though I was a retail building, back to retail.
I'll answer this.
And so
Can you
I'm
answer
just trying to
this?
understand the code.
I could say that.
This is kind of outside of this, but I'm trying to understand how you apply that
Right.
consistently.
So in our previous approval, we didn't have to provide any kind of stormwater because the buildings were existing and there was no change in any kind of impervious areas, but with this,
Right,
with
from
demolishing.
office to apartments, is that defined as a change in use?
So apartments are allowed in the office district. Residential uses are permitted in the office district.
Okay.
So it's not, it does not require a land use amendment to go to residential because the office district includes multifamily.
I'm referring to how the city
Storm.
visualize it this.
I can't speak for stormwater, but I can assure you they reviewed it, and if they had concerns with it, they are eliminating pavement that's on, there used to be a paved parking lot on the residentially zoned property, so they're removing that, and I don't know the stormwater regulations as it applies to a change of use. Typically, they look at what's on the site.
That was through engineering that did
Yeah.
that, so I would assume engineering would have an opinion on that.
Yeah, they actually, unfortunately, there's no one from stormwater here today to answer
Also,
that.
we might want to take a look at condition of approval number 15 and address the stormwater. There could be some additional information there we might want to check out. Melissa just pointed that out to me.
So condition of approval number 15. Let's see. States that revisions to the submitted calculations and plans, as well as additional supporting information, including but not limited to geotechnical SUE data and drainage calculations, will be required to be submitted to and approved by city staff to ensure the project meets the city specifications and design criteria. And as you know, for the FLD process, all we have to provide is the site plan with the stormwater system shown and it's like a one-pager stormwater calculations. So it's not really fully engineered stormwater. And honestly, I've had some projects that have come back through permitting and said, we have some significant changes, we got to go back because the stormwater didn't work out. That's only happened a couple times. Not going to jinx you, Pasquale, but I think in this case, we're where we need to be for this stage.
Thank you.
We did go ahead and calculate the areas based off of the disturbed areas, so even though it was pervious or impervious, it was a disturbed area. So the city of Clearwater requires that we provide some sort of detention for that. And those calculations show that within the pond and within the vault that we're providing. And in this case, we probably may not do the vault since the basketball court's gone away, so it may just be just a pond.
Great, thank you.
And we don't have anything else to add, so if you have any other questions for us, we're happy to answer those. If not, we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Anybody? Any cross-examination by planning?
No cross.
And cross by the applicant. We'll now open the floor to comments by the public. If anybody would like to, please come forward, state your name. Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Jones, and can't believe I asked you to pull it off the consent agenda. My concern was with the basketball court that would be lighted at night next to the residential area, and now that's been taken off. But as long as I'm up here, I would take a minute to talk about reviewing the package. And the area that I was most interested in was the DFE, the floodplain, and the difficulty of finding that information on the drawings. This Matsky finally helped me find the finished floor plan, and I was able to see how it relates to the FEMA map. More information than I ever thought I needed to know, but thank you very much. This is a huge project that's been a huge eyesore for a long time. There was a reference to the project approval in '22. There was another project approval in '17 on this same thing, and it'll be wonderful to get this thing resolved. And I hope the folks out there are really successful and not have any further delays. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any closing remarks by planning and development?
Yes, sir.
Any closing remarks? We'll now close the public hearing and discussion and vote by the board. The only comment that I'm going to make is that this property has been an eyesore for so many years. And, as you've stated with the code enforcement issues and such, and I'm glad to see some affordable housing included within it. And so definitely lend support to it. But anybody else have any comments? If not, any motion?
I move to approve case number FLD 2022-02008A based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to director's items.
Good afternoon, Gina Clayton. We have proposed some changes to your rules of procedure. You know, we look at these every so often. You can see on the back page all the times that you all have adopted changes to your procedure. And I would say that the majority of these revisions are editorial. They're not really substantive. There are a couple of changes that I would bring to your attention to see, to get your thoughts on those and whether or not you want to include them. I would say that all the changes that are shown on pages 1, 2, and 3 are really editorial in nature. They don't really have much impact. We did clarify the order of the meeting, especially when it comes to how items on the consent agenda are handled and how previously continued cases are handled as well. And then we've moved where level 2 the level 3 cases appear on the agenda, which I think is more appropriate. On page 4, this is the one change that I really want to draw to your attention. As you know, in order to have something put on the consent agenda, the applicant and staff have to agree to the conditions of approval, and we've had no objections from the public. But what we've seen over the years, that sometimes we get objections and we pull something off the consent agenda, and then there is no one here at the public hearing, and then the case has is no longer able to be on the consent agenda. So this provision would eliminate the no objections having been received from the public in order for something to be pulled off consent. But certainly at the meeting, the public can pull something off consent. So I'd say that's probably one of the bigger changes. It doesn't change anyone's ability to have something pulled off consent. They just need to be here at the meeting. So that's what I wanted to flag. Also on the next page, down towards the bottom, this is a provision that we've clarified about allowing equal extension of time allotted to planning and development staff, the applicant, and we changed that to the public instead of opposition. So that would give you the ability to grant more time for the public if you wanted to. We also have eliminated references to maximums of presentations because you often allow an extension of time. Again, nothing really earth-shattering here. Let's see here. There's some changes under continuances that are fairly minor. And then I would draw your attention lastly to the time limits on approvals. There's some references here. We'd just like to make that reference the code instead of having in your procedures the timeframes for development orders. So we're governed by that anyway. There's some state changes that coming down that are probably going to impact our timeframes for approval, and we'd just rather not have any potential conflicts between your rules and what we ultimately adopt in the code. So that's why that change is being proposed. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have one question. And this is just thinking out loud. I'm not certain that I'm looking for a change here, but with respect to the one on the extensions of time for the public, I agree with that. I like change from public to opposition, but staff and the applicant each have 10 minutes. The public typically has 3 minutes, and it says equal extensions of time. I'm just wondering, where does that shake out? Because if you give the applicant or the staff an additional 5 minutes, are we now saying the public goes from 3 minutes to 8 minutes? Because it was already kind of intended. I just didn't know how to fix it, but I'm looking at it saying it kind of struck me as a little odd, so.
Yes, well, you put it up for your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, would it be a total of 5 minutes extension, or each person in the public has a 5-minute
Well,
extension is going to be pretty cumbersome.
Yeah, that's why I was looking at it saying,
Do that.
I like the idea that you want to be able to give them some more time, but the question becomes, at what point do you make it, proportionate seemed better than equal to me in the beginning there, but I'm not certain that fixes it completely.
It's a good point.
Would you like us to work on that and bring that back to you?
Well, unless it's the intent of giving every person in the public the same amount of time.
I mean, these are your rules of procedures of how to operate.
I mean, we've had
so
some
we
meetings that
need
would
you
be
to
going to
comfortable.
midnight.
Yeah. Well, and it's
Which
not
I'm not
necessarily
against
intent
it.
to squelch the public, but I just think we need to think
Right.
through the categories that we're dealing with here and how that's the reason why the public has 3 minutes, is because there could be multiple people speaking, whereas the applicant gets one shot and the city gets one shot. We just, I do think the public, if we're going to give some more time, adding a little bit to it, but I don't know whether that's going to be universal to everybody who got up and spoke already. They all get an additional minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The word equal is really what hit me there and what brought up the question. I just wanted to see whether we maybe defer that one and think about it some more, because I don't have a fix for it. I just think that it opens up a can of worms.
If I recall, this changes under legislator, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have people that would be speaking up there. You wouldn't have people with party status in the first place. They would be citizens. So in a way, the rule kind of already says that. But essentially, the way it's written now would be saying only if you oppose the project, you would get extra time, as opposed to anybody who wants to speak on it. So really, this rule doesn't change a whole lot. It just kind of clarifies it. Because
I agree
it's the public speaking, it's not people with party status.
Yeah, I agree that it clarifies. The point that I'm bringing up is a different thought that came up as a result of seeing this change here.
Right,
Yeah.
and equal already exists.
Yeah, I know.
It's just for opposition, so, we can work on that some more if you want to give us some direction on what your thoughts might be, or you can vote it up or down.
My general thought when I first read it, again, and I understand your comment, because this really didn't change a whole lot, because it took public and took it to opposition. But then when I was reading the whole sentence in that context, I think the category of public may get equal time, not necessarily every person who spoke from the public, and the wording on that probably needs to be tweaked so that we're not taking the meeting and all of a sudden giving everybody who spoke from the public an opportunity to go an additional X number of minutes, which could be respectfully 30 people getting up and saying the same exact thing for that extra 2 or 3 minutes. And I don't know that we necessarily go down that path.
I think you run that risk all the time anyway.
Yeah, but the extra time is
redundancy.
what we're talking about here.
I mean, obviously, as Gina mentioned, these are your rules to do with as you wish. I can count, and I think I've been with the board now for 11 or 12 years, the number of times that additional time has been requested on a level 3 application due to complexity on one hand, and I'd likely have fingers left over. It just doesn't happen that often. And as you mentioned, it doesn't really change that much. We're just talking about opposition versus public. So you may wish to adopt it as written and see whether it actually causes the issues that are being raised. They're certainly legitimate. On the other hand, I'm not quite sure how you get to the point. And I think the board legally could say, okay, we're going to extend time for applicant and city and development staff and do some kind of proportional extension for members of the public. But if the worst case scenario is that we listen to some additional public input, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. I guess my suggestion, obviously, again, these are your rules, do it as you wish. I might adopt it and see what happens, because it does provide additional rights to the public, which is not likely to be seen as a negative in scenarios that arise very infrequently.
Having being the one who brought it up, I think that's a good proposal. I think that we see whether it does create an issue, but it is one of those things that, again, was just spurred on by seeing the change, the whole sentence, looking at context. But
I just hope we don't go till 2 in the morning, then y'all are furious at me for suggesting.
no, I mean,
Well, what defines a group? Because if it's a group and he represents them, they can have 10 minutes. Is there a definition of a group?
I don't think
Yeah.
we have a strict definition.
I thought about that because Rose, correct me, council has a specific formula they use.
Yes, so for a group speaker would be an individual who garners an additional minute for every individual who gives up their 3 minutes, if that's what you're referring to.
All right. Yes, so if you want a little more formality around that, and if you like what city council is doing, we could bring back some changes that incorporate that, instead of it just being group and it not really be defined.
Makes sense.
So if I'm understanding, their definition is it takes 7 people to give us 7 additional minutes to the speaker.
Yes,
Where
so there
we've
are,
been just a little bit more lax, that if there's 3 people that got together, we would just say one person speaks, and then you can have the 10 minutes, and it's only 3. We're being a little bit more lenient on that at this level, I think, in the past.
Right. And if you thought 1 minute was too restrictive, you could do it too. I don't think there's a magic number there. I think the goal is to have one person that can represent all the objections without having every single person having to get up and say the same
Same
thing.
thing.
I wouldn't be opposed to Jay's idea that we adopt it this way, but also staff look at that a little bit. Maybe, I do like the idea of maybe accumulating and defining group a little bit better and look at that as a different day, but take these as they are. Just a thought.
All right, well, let's put an asterisk, Mr. Jay's comment on that.
Okay, so do you want us to better define what a group is?
I
And
think
bring
so.
these back?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I think we can go ahead and accept these and then.
Yeah, we
can
could
look at
just bring another amendment forward.
Yeah. Simple
Okay,
enough.
and are you comfortable with the equal extension of time for the public for the legislative hearing?
I think that we accept it the way it is now, at least based upon the conversation that we have. And when you give us definition of group, I think then we can look at that a little bit broader from there at that point in time. That would be my thought.
Anybody else has any comment? Sounds good.
Okay.
And
So you'd be looking for a motion to approve the amendments as
do you want to
drafted?
go to public first?
Yeah, you can do public comment either
Well,
before or
on
after
this
the
matter, yeah,
motions.
we're going to open a public comment on this before we have a motion.
Sure.
Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Did you get the copy that has the strike-throughs and the
Yes.
deletions? Because the one that was on the website originally didn't have that. So I'm here to speak, I'm Bill Johnson again, here to speak to the deletion of the no objections received from the public. As a member of the public, I don't know what the process is for you folks to be aware of the objections from the public, and then for them to be considered by you individually and then considered together collectively. And so without it being on the having a full presentation, it's kind of unlike the basketball court thing that I was complaining about. But if somebody or several people have had some concerns and shared them, and if they're not able to be here, they can at least watch the meeting or see the meeting on the replay and know that there was some consideration of their situation. I don't know that you have the situation very often where you get objections, but you go ahead with this. It just seems like it would be more public friendly to not make this change. Secondly, as long as I was reading this, there's one item that I don't think you enforce because it's really very difficult to handle, and that's on the Section 5 to visual electronic presentations. There's a statement that says that if you're going to make a PowerPoint or a presentation to be viewed by the board, you have to preview it on Thursday with public communications. but the staff report doesn't come out until Thursday. So that's not very much time you can't turn a presentation around that way. And I appreciate the fact that you folks have been flexible on that in the past, so, but I thought I'd just share that with you since I'm up here. Thank you very much. This was the previous one.
Just to address the
Yeah.
comment, any objections that we receive, we send to the board. That's in the public record.
Prior to the meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We
But
do.
we're saying to be pulled from consent, just for clarification, to be pulled from consent, they have to be present. That's what the change is.
That's what the change is, correct.
But if you get any emails or anything of that nature or formal,
Yes, that's all part of the record. We
Right.
send you that for
Right.
people who are, support the project or opposed to the project.
And also remember too, if you look at that letter of objection, you see a serious problem that you think warrants a discussion, any of you can pull it yourselves as well. So it's not like the letters are going to be falling on deaf ears. You will still be receiving them. We will still have the ability to pull it. It's just not going to be an auto
yeah, we
ruling.
can pull it.
And clearly, if you think that's important to continue on with that, then we're not going to, we don't object to
Well, let's
that.
take these one at a time. Anybody have any real objection to that? Of the way it's written, the way it is? I mean, we could pull, if we get objections, obviously, and we feel that there's merit there, then we can pull it from consent ourselves. Any board member can.
And the person writing the objections, if they really feel that strongly.
Things happen, but yeah. All right, so it seems like we're okay with that, but just going at the second one that he brought up regarding the PDF, I mean.
The
so-
PowerPoints?
The PowerPoint.
Yeah, actually, I had asked that we look at this and not bring it forward because I don't think it's always something that you've required people to do. But and I'll let Lauren speak to this, I think she contacted Public Communications and they still want to have a preview to make sure it can be read on the television.
Good afternoon, Lauren Matzke, Planning and Development. And yes, that's correct. I had a conversation with our Public Communications Director, and this is something that we do and coordinate with. We may not have a hard, fast deadline. If we can accommodate, they will review. So obviously, allowing people to present is an important part of the process. It's just the goal is earlier because that gives them time and a little bit of breathing room as it's not part of their regular work, but typically, I think more often than not, it's applicants that bring PowerPoints, a little bit more formal presentation. But I believe that again, maybe a handful of times, someone has come with a digital slides or PDF or something that they wanted to put on the computer, and y'all have approved it, and we have helped them get that set up.
So I guess I would want to question Public Communications to see if they would just agree to us removing the time or at least making it no later than Tuesday, maybe before the meeting. Because I understand Mr. Johnson's concern about the staff report not coming out till Thursday.
Yeah.
Will there be enough time, though, for them to review it?
What they do is they'll pull it up and just double check that everything's readable. Staff does this outside of the presentations here. Anytime we have PowerPoints for city council, we come early and pull it up on screen and just make sure everything's readable for the people at home. So it's a quick click through just to make sure that everything works correctly too. And in addition, they install it on the machine, so there's no day of trying to worry about thumb drives and any technical glitches.
I mean, if you're okay with Tuesday morning,
We would need to discuss with their staff. It's not our department, so.
It would seem to me that if the section, that second bullet point were changed so that they have to get it to our public relations department prior to the meeting for review, and then change the last sentence so we have the discretion to say we can accept, if they find out here that it works. Because the last sentence is mandatory, doesn't even give us discretion. And I think that's what Mr. Johnston's point was, we really haven't enforced it that way. Maybe we worked the wording. If we took out the mandatory nature of it, and gave the board discretion and had them review before the meeting, those two things would probably fix this issue to allow us the opportunity to get more public input, but also make sure that technically it's going to work and we're not sitting here for 5 minutes waiting for somebody to get their PowerPoint to start.
That's a good point, Mike. I agree. It's taking out the will to may or something, may not be able to due to technical.
I think they could work the wording and along with that other one, bring it back to us, but I think it's worth considering.
I agree.
Good point.
I agree. Thank you. So with,
I would move to approve if we're closed.
move to approve.
As presented, and they've got direction for some additional changes.
Second.
Any further discussion?
You have a motion, you need a second? You got
Need a second.
There was?
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And now we will go on to election of officers, I believe are the next items. So, the chair and vice chair, and I don't know what goes first or what.
Yeah, y'all have typically used Robert's rules as a process for electing officers. I see that all of you have shown up today, which we appreciate, because usually the guy who's not here gets elected.
That's why we're all here.
That's why. That's what happened last year.
But the way that process ordinarily works, the way you've done it in the past is take nominations from the board. There is no requirement that a nomination be seconded. Once the nomination process is finished, you'll simply move to approve a chairman by vote second and majority vote, by motion second majority vote, and the same thing with the vice chair. So do your chairmanship first. And again, you can nominate yourself. There's no requirement that a nomination be seconded. We'll collect the nominations and then take a motion.
I nominate John Quattrocki as chairman.
I'll second that.
If anybody else wants to do it, you're welcome to. That's all I'm saying.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, a motion to appoint Mr. Quattrocki as chairperson. Is there a motion?
I move to put elect Mr. Quattrocki as chairman.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thanks. We move on to vice chair. We have a nomination for a vice chair. Can I make a nomination or no?
You can. Sure.
I didn't know it was chair if you could or not. I'd like to nominate Mr. Butzikas as vice chair.
Second.
All those in favor? Is there any other motion?
We didn't even ask him if he did.
Is there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Congratulations, Michael. And before we adjourn here too, I want to congratulate our new mayor-elect, Mr. Rector. Thank you for your time here on this board, but I know that you'll do much greater and more important things as our new mayor, and wish you the best of success.
Second
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much, and I just want to say to the board members and the staff, it's been a real joy to serve on this board for the past 2 years, and I will enter the office of Mayor of Clearwater with a great appreciation for the important work that this board and the staff do to help make our city great. So appreciate the congratulations, but also really value the 2 years that I've spent with you all on this board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Quattrocki, can
Yes,
I make an
ma'am.
announcement?
You can.
Thank you. We are going to be bringing forward an ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, and we are going to have an online public meeting on April 2nd at 6 o'clock. That meeting will have a presentation, and then we're going to be doing a drop-in on April 11th from 6 to 7:30, I believe, at the Morningside Recreation Center. It will be a drop-in, informal. We'll have some boards that explain what we're proposing through these code amendments, and then we'll be bringing that to you in April at your April meeting.
Could I ask you to do me a favor and just send out an email with exactly what you said to the board members?
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind, something,
Yeah.
please. Thank you.
Gene, is that going to be online so we can watch it?
The one meeting on April 2nd will be an online
Okay.
meeting with a presentation. The 11th will be a drop-in.
I would just like to add, we're experimenting with the online meeting. I know in a world like this with COVID, experimenting with online seems a little odd, but we haven't done it in a little while, but we're intending to record it so that way for anyone who can't
be there. It'll be available online for replay. So,
Excellent.
great, thank
Anything
you.
else? This meeting's adjourned at 1:40. Thank you.